How many years will it take for Hasbro to complete the Astonishing X-Men team? This many, bub. Okay, today let's take a quick look at the Hasbro Marvel Legends 85th Anniversary Astonishing X-Men Wolverine. Oh, prepare to get nitpicky. I've said it 1,000 times, X-Men is my meat and potatoes, my steak and taters. And in the hierarchy of X-Men teams, X-Men eras, X-Men looks, there is Giant Size, there is Outback, there is New X-Men, oh yeah, I'd take them all in those black leather uniforms, and then there's Astonishing. Any given day, depending on my mood, those are all interchangeable. So this was high on my list. And so I am very aware of my own general preferences when it comes to the Astonishing costume looks. And that's the first 24 issues with Cassaday on art. The interiors, not the alternate covers, not the guest artists, not the promo materials, that specific look. And even then, Cassaday was not consistent issue to issue, panel to panel. So I have my own mental image of what I wanted here. And when I saw the promotional materials when it was first revealed, there was a lot I liked, a lot I loved, but some that wasn't, it wasn't in my wheelhouse. It wasn't what I wanted. So we're gonna do some customizing. There's a little play day at the end of this review. First, we're gonna look at the figure itself, well, the packaging, and it's pretty much what we expect with the 85th anniversary line. There's the squareness, there's some gold to it, the Marvel logo, 85 years, up here Marvel Legends, window showing off the figure, warning choking hazard, small parts. Yes, we know Wolverine's short, therefore the figure is short, therefore smaller, so don't put him in your mouth. On the side, some nice Astonishing X-Men Wolverine art, Marvel 85 years. On the bag, more iconic Astonishing X-Men Wolverine art, although when it first appeared, I think it was like this. On the other side, some windows, some logos on top, change up the order on bottom, legalese barcode. Let's get this open, see what's going on here. Now, all that intro, all that setup probably made you think that I hate this figure, that it's bad in some way. That couldn't be further from the truth. It is an excellent Wolverine figure. Hell, it was just in recent history that I got what I thought was my favorite Marvel Legends Wolverine figure ever, the X-Men 97 Wolverine, and now, don't get me wrong, I still love this, but man, whew. It's the best engineered, it's the best sculpted, it's the best articulated, it's almost the best costume. It was so close, but other than that, yeah, this takes number one. First up, I think this is a completely new sculpt, which is required when you're talking about Astonishing X-Men. Because Astonishing X-Men means seam lines and raised edges. Right down the middle, there's this bead, this seam running down all the way up under the crotch. Same thing on the front of the legs, running from the hip down to the top of the boot. The tiger stripes are sculpted in on the sides and up here on the shoulder, and the separation between the blues and the yellows are also raised, going up and over and all the way down the back. There you can see some wrinkles, some stretching, because he's so muscular, stuffing himself into this tight a suit. It's much more muscle tight here on the front. Same thing down at the buttocks, just stretching across the back of the legs. There's another seam line running there, and on the legs it's the same. There's an edge separating the blues and the yellows. Even the arms seem to be new because they're so much thicker than previous Wolverines. I say thicker, Hot Claw's Wolverine is close, but Astonishing is still a bit bigger and much more refined. The belt is a separate piece that can float up and down a bit. The boots are separate pieces too. The leg comes down and plugs in somewhere about right here. That allows the tops to come up and be their own entity instead of sculpted right into the leg. There's some flexiness to them. There's even a sculpted edge for the soles, and then the black line running up the center of the foot that splits off into the Wolverine mask boot motif things, that whatever those are called. The gloves are an overlay too. You can see if you pop off the hand, there is the arm coming down through the center. There's a seam line on the front of those too, going down to a gloved look for the hand. Sculpted rectangles on the back of the gloves and on the sides of the boots. Those are painted yellow on top of blue plastic. And talking about that, there is some mushiness in places. It kind of jumps the line or looks messy, but for the most part, it's not too bad. If you get super close, the camera will go fuzzy. Focus. If you get super close, you're going to find blemishes and stuff, like right there. Bam. Or some edges that aren't so clean, but for the most part looks good. I love the arm hair too. It's sculpted and then it's also painted on, but then it kind of fades in and out as you go around the arm. There's that, gets heavy and then lightens up as it goes to the front. But that brings us to the head sculpt, and look at this Cassaday looking motherfucker. It's not perfect. I almost feel like the hair should be a little bit smaller. In the comics, they almost did away with the hair horns. There were just hints of them. This is a little more prominent, but the more I look, it's not a deal breaker. And then I just love Logan's expression here. It's almost when he wakes up and catches Kitty and Colossus in the kitchen. Huh? About time. Got a hint of 5 o'clock shadow, the lips, the eye paint, the eyebrows, the mutton chops, just... This is Logan. I think I like this more than the masked head, which we'll get to. Engineering-wise, I love the way they've been doing the claws lately. 3 separate pieces embedded in the hand, and they come out fairly straight. You remember back in the day pulling Wolverines out of the package and it's just mangled mess? No, it could be straightened out a little bit. I could heat it up and bring this one up slightly. And it's probably the same for the left. They're out of alignment barely, but not even noticeable when you're looking at a distance. Shoulder pads are ring around the shoulder, so they're rubbery. They flex out to get out of the way of arm articulation, but also ride around on that swivel. For those who love the upper dumbbell lower hinge, they've implemented that. All kinds of crunchiness, and then arc back, some tilt side to side, and then the rotation is up there. Which is fine because you can get looks like this, but I'm working towards the neck because you get crunched down and it's not terrible, but the dumbbell is sunk really far down in there. There's only this much clearance up here and you can barely see the other end down in there. My first thought was, okay, I'm gonna pop this, Dremel it out, open it up a bit, get more movement forward and back, side to side, but I realized that's already a pretty thin wall, and I'm not even sure if that ball will pop out from down in there. Thankfully, the ball going up into the head does give it quite a bit of movement here, 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 and here. The dumbbell itself is just for slight adjustment. Since we're talking about that, going over articulation, hey, there's a dumbbell up in the neck. Can look up, and then some down with nice tilt and then side to side. Butterfly joint kicks forward, kicks way back. Pin at the shoulder rotates around with a hinge that goes up to there. Swivel at the bicep. Double elbow goes up to about right there. Dumbbell at the torso gets some hula hoop action. Then there's a hinge down at the bottom for some crunchticles, some arcticles, and then around and pin coming out to the hip, kicks forward, kicks back, kicks, oh, ow, look at that, better than a lot of Spider-Mans. Swivel at the thigh, that breaks the design all to hell. Double knee, oh, he can. I'm kicking my own butt, bub. Even though the boot is a separate piece, it does not swivel. Hinge at the ankle goes back, goes forward, and then forward facing pin for rocker. For accessories, out of the package, there's 2 clawed hands, and I already showed it, it pops out pretty easy. There's an alternate set of fists, and then there's a splayed out right and a pointer left. It's cool to get expression hands on a Wolverine figure. And then another thing I've already shown, the head pops off and there is this alternate masked head that looks really good. This is an excellent Wolverine head. I just don't feel like this is an Astonishing X-Men Wolverine head. It has the shorter ears and everything, but it just doesn't have that astonishing flair to it. And it kind of looks small on this body, but overall, it's not terrible. That's just me griping. Again, I'm letting my own personal preferences get in the way. Because it is still an Astonishing Wolverine, who stands at about 5 7/8 inches tall, maybe slightly shorter than that. That makes this Wolverine a bit larger than previous Marvel Legends Wolverines, but as I've said several times, Cassidy was a bit inconsistent, even with sizes. I mean, if you want a smaller Astonishing X-Men Wolverine, you can go back to the Toy Biz version. Although I will say that the unmasked head still holds up, like 2 different versions of the same version of Logan. And then that's what I was talking about with the more subdued hair. I think Toy Biz nailed that, and Hasbro nailed this. But it's still short enough to fit in fine with the Marvel Legends Astonishing X-Men Emma Frost and Cyclops. 3 members down. Come on, Hasbro. Kitty is in dire need of an update. I think the Colossus they already have is a good start. It definitely needs some tweaks to be astonishing. Beast, though, is gonna need a whole new sculpt. How about an Ord? Hasbro has done Danger, and I guess it's passable, but oh. And then even Xavier made an appearance in that storyline. Can we get an armor somehow? Some way? please? Now to get into the Playday aspect of this. Going back to Beast here, this is the Hasbro Beast body with a Fan Plastic 4 head, and then I repainted the whole thing. Well, okay, I repainted all the blues. Ord was made so long ago that I don't even remember some of the base parts. I think Lord of the Rings was the body, and I did a bunch of sculpting on top, but it is terrible. It's falling apart, and ooh, that's nasty. Xavier is a G.I. Joe Classified Series retro-carded Snake Eyes with a Casting Cave head. And then Danger is the Hasbro version with all the little design work painted with some light blue, just to lighten it up a bit, spruce it up. This is the Hasbro Cyclops, but I also made a custom, again with a Fan Plastic 4 head and the Spider-Man UK body. This one's a little bit taller. This is stock Emma with that beautiful Cassaday head sculpt. And I know some people don't agree, but that's perfect. Which brings us back to the point of this video, the new Astonishing X-Men Wolverine. Again, this is completely Astonishing X-Men Wolverine, but it's not what we saw in the interiors of the first 24 issues, the Cassaday designed Wolverine costume. Well, he may have put these rectangles on the gloves and boots at some points, but from what I can tell, that was mostly promotional material. And then the belt changed all over the place. Sometimes it was thicker, sometimes it didn't have the capsules, sometimes it was a gold X with a red background, sometimes it was gold with no background. And then the tiger stripes sometimes were spread out more and then thicker, coming over the shoulder and down here. I think for the most part, this design was based on a Bowen statue from about 10 years ago. But the biggest things that break my brain are these rectangles and the head sculpt. That's why I made sure to point out that the gloves are an overlay and the boots are a separate piece, because that means under this yellow, there's blue plastic. After slicing them off with a sharp X-Acto and then hitting it with several different grits of sandpaper, I was able to take those rectangles off. It's not perfect, I did get a little rowdy with the blade, but for the most part, it's not noticeable unless you get right up on it. It also helped that I came along and hit the whole thing with dull coat, so it knocked down some of the sandy parts and made it match the other blues and kind of knocked down the shine everywhere. I also had a Fan Plastic 4 Wolverine head. In fact, I've had a couple. This has been on my shelf for a little while, and I was going to use the Hot Blades Wolverine body, which would have meant knocking the boots down, repainting the belt, shaving down the shoulder pads to make them flatter or coming up with something new, and then giving the whole thing a repaint. So when Hasbro announced this, I thought, hell yeah, now all I have to do is, oh no, I have to match up the yellow-orange color, which as you can see is a little darker, and it's more obvious in the lights on the camera. That's not me making excuses. In person, it looks so much better, but it does, really. That was done with D&D Fire Newt Orange. And then the skin tone is my new go-to, the Delta Creative Ceram Coat Medium Flesh. You can see that it's more angular like Cassaday drew it, and then the dark part goes around the back. But more than anything, it's the eyes. They're long and pointy. And I don't know how that would work in the real world, but it doesn't matter because it's Wolverine. He's got claws popping out of his hands. It's a comic book. I also tried for a little hint of stubble. I tried this, and I probably need to retry it, but my problem is that I can't do asymmetry. When I try to do stuff like this, it ends up like straight lines all the way across. So I just painted a lighter gray in there and then dry brushed the flesh back on top, and I may redo that. All in all, it wouldn't surprise me if Hasbro came back and actually gave us this version, because like I said, overlays for the gloves, boots are a separate piece, and a masked head that doesn't have the grimacing face. But it makes me happy because now I can do this and have this as my running around the mansion Wolverine, and then have this as my action Wolverine. So at the end of the day, as excited as I was to customize this, I am still pretty damn happy with the stock figure. It does its job. It is an Astonishing X-Men Wolverine. It's not exactly what we saw in the issues, but it's how we saw the character a lot of times outside the issues. And really the rectangles add some color to the boots and gloves. I can't fault that look at all. In fact, the more I look at this figure, the more I kinda like it. But the Cassaday interior art look will always have that place in my heart. And that's the thing about this hobby. You can do whatever you want. I'm not trying to talk anybody into, well, this is terrible. Why would they put squares on that? They just ruin the figure. Like I said, I was already working on this custom, which would have required a lot more sanding, a lot more slicing, a whole hell of a lot more painting. That's why I got two. That's not how I always customize, but X-Men. Yes, Can I have an extra portion of steak and then another spoonful of potatoes? Thank you. They're going to upgrade Beast. They got to at some point, right? If they're getting this far into the Astonishing team, they got to keep going. Kitty should be a whole new sculpt. Colossus can get by with reuse because his costume was essentially his giant size without the flares. Subdued belt, boots, lower, I think. Oh yeah, he had those knee pad things with the yellow seam line. They're knocking him out slowly but surely.